gonna do for me? Yeah. I ain't blind and I don't like what I think I see. Taking it to the street. No more need for running. Taking it to the street. Taking it to the street. Oh, come on, people. Taking it to the street. Go tell it on the mountain. Taking it to the street. Go tell it in the valley. Taking it to the street. Go tell it on the river. Taking it to the street. Come on, people. Taking it to the street. Taking it. Taking it to the street. Taking it. Taking it to the street. Oh, taking it. Taking it to the street. Yeah. Taking it to the street. Taking it to the street. Taking it to the street. Taking it to the street.
Can you sense the change? Can you sense the tension between what was and what's coming forth? There is something different on the horizon. You know, John Maxwell is one of my favorite thought leaders on leadership, and he says this. He says, change is inevitable, but growth is optional. To grow, you must see the value in yourself, to add value to yourself and to others. You must know yourself to grow yourself. I wish somebody would put that in the chat. That's something good to say again. Somebody put that there. To know yourself, to grow yourself, you must know yourself to grow yourself. I'm going to say it again. You must know yourself to grow yourself. Well, the last few months has been about the streets. It's been about the boulevards and the avenues of America and the streets of most countries around the world. We've actually seen, think about this, we've seen the streets of our country bare. I don't know when I would ever think I would see Times Square in New York empty. The streets of San Francisco and LA, nobody. The crowded streets of South Beach in Miami, or Chicago's Magnificent Mile, or Wicker Park, nothing. We've literally emptied the streets by staying home, sheltering in place, hardly any cars, just a few bikes, empty and bare, as we all made and we continue to make, many of us do, adjustments to keep ourselves and our loved ones as safe as we can. But let's be honest about this. Some of us did it only because we were mandated to do so. That's right, you know that. Others of us did so and are doing so because we have seen firsthand the effects of the type of sickness that can literally take the lives of those we know and love. And so far, there's no cure, just therapies like plasma infusions and then mitigation. So we've done what our health professionals and civic leaders have guided us to do: washing our hands, cleaning surfaces, wearing masks, using physical distance. Jesus said it like this in John chapter 15, and I love this because I consider this to be the essential part of the essential gospel of Jesus. He says, there is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends. And that is exactly what's happened. People have laid down their lives for friends and strangers because that's how we can get through this. Together. Everyone doing what they can do. But I realize also that staying off the streets was not an option for those who were called and had to respond to and go to the front of the line. They had to get on the streets instead of staying off the streets. They were doing their best, many combining faith, love, and medical science to fight for and care for those who fell ill, some of whom were our own family members, friends, and loved ones. And we made way for them, we made a way for them The essential workers, according to the CDC, those that include healthcare workers and public health workers and first responder organizations and employees of public utilities and sanitation and transportation and food and medicine supply and chain. All of these companies and organizations were important. The truth is, we need all of them, and we've needed all of them. We need the medical team and the grocery clerk. We need the farmer and the pharmacy. And they're still doing their part, and we honor them. Somebody put that in the chat for me. We honor all of our essential workers. But still others have been more supportive and playing a role mainly from their home. But we also have needed what I call these ministers of encouragement. Those who would bring a word, who would bring a song, who would bring us comedy. Many who found ways, despite the need for social distance, to still be present, like the food bank, providing meals for those without. Our own CRB partnering across the city. Those doing grocery shopping for those who are most vulnerable. Giving a warm embrace through a card in the mail. Those who've been visiting each other by video and giving love and light, as well as providing pertinent information and encouragement on the digital streets of social media. You're all really essential. We've all been laying down our lives in certain ways for those we love and even for those we don't know. But as we've been off the streets, at home, for many, with more time with family and to see what's happening in the world, in the midst of profound uncertainty, we've been faced with our country's unresolved issues. And we've been seeing what's been happening on the streets of our country. We learned about, and I hope you will say their names with me, we learned about Ahmaud Arbery, an unarmed 25-year-old African-American man who was fatally shot on a street in a neighborhood near Brunswick, Georgia. We learned about Brianna Taylor, a 26-year-old African-American woman who was fatally shot by police in Louisville, Kentucky, when plainclothes officers entered her apartment looking for someone who was 10 miles away and already in custody. And George Floyd. George Floyd died on May 25th after a police officer and other officers standing around in Minneapolis kneeled on his neck for over 8 minutes. It was compounded for us here in Tulsa in light of last Sunday, May 31st, being the 99th anniversary of the worst race massacre in the history of America. It's time to make that change. In a recent interviews this past week, Dr. Cornel West, who I so admire and respect, he said this. He says, there is no doubt that this is America's moment of reckoning. This is America's fork in the road. And I agree with him. Our country is again at a crossroads. So even in the midst of what's considered one of the greatest global health crises ever, a crisis that disproportionately affects Black Americans. And as a result of this health crisis, the highest unemployment rate since the 1930s. Is anybody with me? It was time then to take it to the streets. And that's what's happened and still happening for almost 2 weeks now. Even as he's being remembered in services across the country, George Floyd's death sparked deep-seated anger among Americans regarding police killings and systemic racism. And according to CNN and other news outlets, all 50 states and multiple countries have participated in protests. The world, listen to me please, the world is crying out. Toronto, London, Paris, Lebanon, Iran, parts of Africa and Latin America, Asia, what? People are marching and protesting to say enough is enough. This must stop. Yes, the world is groaning and waiting for the manifestation of the sons and daughters of God and good, those that will make the changes in themselves and then make the necessary changes in their world. Notice I said their world. The truth is, and I just wonder if we can talk honestly this morning, the truth is we're dealing with the underlying vestiges of laws, ordinances, policies, rules, including slave codes and black codes, planned economic suppression and destruction, and rules of social interaction that were designed to keep black people as a group, who were originally viewed as property, by the way, as essentially the bottom caste in every area of life as much as possible. Wrongs that in large part, listen to me, have never been corrected. Public sanctioned opinions from as high up in our federal government as the Supreme Court that declared that black people have no rights that white people are obligated or bound to respect. Think about that. The kind of thought structure that's still around today. The historical and chronic viewing of black men, particularly, as a threat to society. And as a result, according to several reports, black men are more likely to die in police custody than their white counterparts, which leads to the unjust deaths of black people in America. And then, I hope you can stay with me for just a few moments. Then here in Tulsa, the worst race massacre in American history, and the fact that for the most part, the majority of Tulsans, let alone Oklahomans or Americans, never even knew about it. Never even knew that it took place. Many only finding out from the airing of a miniseries on HBO last fall called The Watchmen. Can we talk? Can we really talk? The earth is groaning and saying to the United States, don't mix the issues. You have to deal with this. You have to correct this. So yes, as this has been happening around the country, we need our white brothers and sisters to walk alongside of us, and even at times to walk in front of us. Yes, I said it. Walk in front of us. Why? Because, dear brothers and sisters, you are the majority. And we are, as black people, our nation's only largely non-immigrant planned minority. As you are a part and connected to All Souls, I need you to remember something. No one should be surprised. If you're connected to this church, no one should be surprised that this congregation is right in the middle of trying to make things right. At least since 1960. What is that? That's at least 60 years now. When the late Reverend Dr. John Wolfe became the minister here, All Souls has been on the front lines of racial justice. It's the call of this church. It's part of the call of this church to stand for freedom and justice. All of Tulsa knows that. Many people around the world know that. If you're a member of All Souls, you need to know that too. One example, and didn't you hear about it? It was Dr. John Wolfe in 1965 when they were saying, Dr. Wolfe, why don't you go down to Selma and march with Dr. Martin Luther King? He had great respect, of course, for Dr. King, but he said Tulsa needs something right here. And right here in this sanctuary, he held the first interfaith and interracial worship service, the very first one, in response to the marches. Baptist, Catholic, Jewish, Episcopal, Lutheran, even the minister from the historic Vernon AME, now pastored by the Reverend Dr. Robert Turner, who was one of the key voices in this movement and one that we're partnering with, and others were all here in this sanctuary. And after the service, he and Tulsa's clergy led a civil rights march through downtown Tulsa. And then it didn't stop. When Reverend Dr. Marlon Lavenhar, a senior minister, came in 2000, and we're celebrating his 20th year here at All Souls, he became the chair of the Tulsa Metropolitan Ministries Committee Against Racism. And he was the leader in calling for reparations to the survivors of the race massacre after a state commission had made that recommendation. And he actually was able to raise some money. The Unitarian Universalist Association helping to give some of that money. They got something, not what they needed, not what they should have gotten, but they got a little something to say, hey, from the churches that we're thinking about you, not from the state, not from the city, but the churches, hey, we're thinking about you, and we know what's going on. Both he and our executive minister, Reverend Barbara Prose, have led countless workshops, including what are white people to do? And if you haven't been involved with that workshop and with that webinar and that seminar, I hope that you get involved. We just had one a couple of weeks ago. It's going to be another one coming up in just a little while. What are white people to do? And also developing a program called Rewire that many of you have been involved with. And if you haven't had a chance to take that, please look into it. They've worked with Tulsa's Black community in partnership and preached on racial justice. I'm just scratching the surface because we have a wonderful service, but I got to say just a couple of things here. Much more has been done. So All Souls is doing the work because All Souls is called to do the work. I'm talking about the work of one of our longtime beloved members, Roger Blaze. I so respect and love Roger, who wrote an amazing article about what's been happening in his hometown of Minneapolis. And if you haven't read it, you need to check it out. Somebody put it in the chat at beyondbelief.online. Check out his article. We have other people who are standing with us right there in Minneapolis. We've heard from Allison Oleg, our former executive director of stewardship, who's there with her husband Dan and their family. We've heard from Reverend Justin Schroeder. We've talked with him and many others around the country, but we have people there in Minneapolis. So it's not just about taking it to the streets out there, but taking it to my streets. What does it mean to take it to the streets? Every person has to ask the question, what is my call? What is summoning me? Is anything calling me? What am I impressed to do? How am I being pulled to show, to demonstrate a love that is conditional, or unconditional, a love that is unconditional. Don't get it twisted, dear friend. You may not be the one who's on the front line of the protest. You might be the one in the background who's taking care of those who participate. Because in the pushback and the push forward and the protest reform, there are always people in the front, there are people in the middle, and there are people in the back, and then there are people who are still learning. Everyone is important, and everyone has a role. And that's what you're going to see and hear about today. The people in the front marching and speaking truth to power. The people in the middle moving things forward, and the people in the back who are available to support and bring supplies and provide safe spaces. We're learning, all of us, every day, how to love our neighbor. Love those who are nearby and far away. And the people who are still learning, we're all still learning, and want to do the right thing. Notice that right thing may start right in your own home. Your call could be on the streets of your own neighborhood. What's your address? Whatever your address is, that's your call to start right there. It could be having a gentle, loving relationship, or maybe a firm relationship with people on social media or friends and neighbors. It could be making yourself uncomfortably, let me say that again. It could be making yourself uncomfortably comfortable. My friend Mike Todd says that by starting a relationship with someone who doesn't look like you. Just as each of the parts of the human body have a place and function, everyone has a place. I hope you find yours, and I believe that you will. We can change the world and make it a better place. That's what Nelson Mandela said. It's in your hands to make a difference. Listen, friends, and I so miss seeing all of you. New Dimensions, I miss you so much. All of you, I'm just looking at faces in my own mind, I miss you. This is what I want you to remember as we're together today. Your hands can heal. Your arms can soothe. Your voice can comfort. And the movement of your mind and body into loving, constructive action can make all the difference. Start where you are.